Hello friends, welcome to my channel. I am Noelle and this week we are going to make a fantail skirt. It is not something that was on my current projects list. I see no mention of a fantail skirt here. I do see one here. The problem is that I just made this and I just made this and frankly I made the rest of this whole outfit and I just kind of want to break. Also, one of the things I realized when I was in Chicago is I just really don't have any like casual costumes. Like all my costumes are a production. So I thought I would maybe make a fantail skirt. I could maybe later make a vest for it. I made that other vest. I thought that was a cute vest. Could make another vest. Also, I wanted something that I could do like a little bit more casual, like cottagecore-y, like history bounding kind of, like can I wear a skirt with a t-shirt? Like can I do that? The skirt that I have chosen is the Black Snail Patterns fantail skirt, which I think is super cute. I also think if you wanted to, you could like shorten it a bit and make it like maybe T-length kind of like mid-calf, and then you'd have a really sweet like walking skirt situation that's more history bounding, you know, definitely not historically accurate, but you know, sometimes you want a little more boundy. So I thought I would give this skirt a go. I'm very excited to make it. It's been on my list forever and it's about time I get one done. So I thought I would just do a little like palette cleanser before I get back into the grind. The lack of casual costume is also kind of a pain because, like, you know, you get invited to a garden party or like tea or something like that. You don't want to wear like a full situation all the time. Like sometimes it's fun to just have like a little something that's maybe a little less stressful to wear. So I'm gonna make this skirt, and I think one of the things that I'm gonna try to do is maybe make it so that I can wear it with my corset or without. So like maybe have two clasp areas that I can close this to, like, you know, because my waist is a different size. So let's get to it. The first thing I have to do is tape this pattern together. We've already had our first like snafu. Okay, so the IMA lesson for you all. Read all of your instructions before you cut your pattern. I do this all the time. I just cut. I cut it a size too small because above the size chart there's a paragraph that says that they've already taken 1.5 inches out of this pattern because they're assuming you're going to wear a corset with it. So if your natural waist size is 40 inches, that waistband is 38.5 inches, which it is. I just measured it. So I didn't read that. I just went to 40 inches and cut out that size. Cool. So I get why you would do that. Like that totally makes sense. But honestly, I would much prefer if they just let me do that, because I don't corset down 1.5 inches anyway. Like I corset down 1 inch tops. So assuming 1.5 inches isn't great. I also know people who corset down like 6 inches. So like, just give us the pattern in the size that it's supposed to be in. Like this is kind of ridiculous. Sigh. So I'm already like to this guy. Also the pocket is comically small. Like if you include seam allowance, this is my hand. And of course I'm not going to stick my whole hand in like this. I guess my hand kind of fits if I do this, if you take out 5/8 seam allowance all over the place, but like we're gonna enlarge that. Anyway, I'm taping together the back piece. These two pieces from the front don't get enlarged no matter what. I'm gonna just tape some extra paper to the sides of these to make it the next size up. And then I have this one big skirt piece that was cut out. And so it's just along this one side. So I can either make a note to just tell myself to cut it out bigger, which I can do, or I can tape another piece of paper to it, which I might. So we'll see. That is an advantage of tape it at home patterns, is like I could just go print out those pages again and remake this. I don't want to. I think it's a waste of paper, blah, blah, blah. So I'm just gonna like make it happen by taping other stuff to it, but like I'm so annoyed. I'm annoyed with myself because I made the mistake of not reading the instructions first, which should be the thing that you do every time. So like, do as I say, not as I do. But like, I'm annoyed. Because also that measurement isn't correct for me as far as, like, it would, even if I did wear a corset under it, which I might, it's still not the right measurement. So like, that's very frustrating. Okay, I have embiggened everything, added an extra like set of tape and paper to all of the pattern pieces that I needed to. And therefore we can do this and that. And now I apparently really need to do that. Okay, this is an interesting part of this pattern, which is they do not make you stick all the sheets together. They give you the top edge of the skirt and then they tell you to lengthen it a certain specific amount, which is 23.5 inches, in case you care what that amount is, all the way down to the bottom, so that you don't have to waste paper, which is kind of cool. Okay, this is done. Okay, so now is the time when I need to choose the fabric that I'm going to use, so I'm going to go dig around my garage, and while I do that, I am going to tell you about this week's sponsor, June's Journey. As you guys may know, I am a huge fan of mobile games. I use them to relax and unwind. I use them to keep from being bored when I'm in line in places. I play them all the time, and I have clocked many hours with June's Journey. I've been playing this game for absolutely years. It's one of my favorites. You play a 1920s lady detective called June Parker who is trying to solve her sister's murder, and it is a beautifully designed hidden object murder mystery game. I like both aspects of this game. The murder mystery part has me hooked. Like, I cannot wait to someday finish this game. Like, do I get to find out who murdered her sister? But you're looking for clues, and you're doing that through a little hidden object part of the game, which is super fun. I love it. It's like memory, except you can keep playing the same scene over and over again, and they keep adding more stuff or like changing the things that you have to find. So it becomes not only memory of like the stuff that you know where it is, but the stuff that you kind of maybe saw before. It's really fun. One of the things I really appreciate about this game is its like art style. It's really beautiful, it's very vibrant and colorful, but also everything's hidden in a really like unique and interesting way. And you can zoom in on the little scenes and try to figure out where your stuff is, and there's ways to get clues about where it is if you move your screen around, which I also find very helpful because it's like a hint without really being a hint. I've taken myself outside in the afternoons and having a little relaxation session, since we are in the few months of the year where it is very pleasant outside, and I just lay in the grass and play this game for hours. Another part of this game that's super fun is that you get to decorate your own mansion and your garden, and I love that part. Like, I like picking out little things to put in my garden, making little pathways, doing stuff like that. It is free to download. It is available on iOS and Android, and free even on your PC through Facebook Games. Anyway, I love this game. I think you're gonna love it too. If you'd like to join me on this adventure, please go to the link in my description to download a copy for yourself. Thanks, June's Journey. Okay, we are on to the cutting fabric part. I have this miraculous situation that I got. This is coming out a lot brighter on camera. It's definitely dark. If I move over here, that's kind of the color it is. I seem to have a ton of this because I have all of these. I don't know how much I have. I also don't think it's wool, so I've made a little clipping and I'm going to go see what I can find out about its makeup properties. I did get this in London when I was there in 2019. I think the guy even told me it's not wool, blah blah blah. Yeah, but it's super cute and I really like it, and this would make a cute little skirt and vest combo for sure. This pile is just under 7 yards. And this is 2 pieces. One is 3 yards and one is just over 1 yard. I don't know how I got these cuts like this, but whatever. Really what I want to know is, can I make this skirt and maybe a waistcoat? And the answer is yes. Can I make 2 waistcoats? Yeah. Can I make something else maybe? Maybe. So we're gonna go ahead and at least try to get the skirt done. That should be easy out of this because I think this takes 4.5 and this is just under 7, so that should be just fine. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this, and then I'm going to interline it with tarlatan just around the hem. And I need to find a lining fabric. They're suggesting polished cotton, so let me go look at that. I don't have any polished cotton in any color that is dark like this, so it might just be a weird inside. We'll see. Polished cotton only comes in weird colors. Like it really just comes in weird colors. I do have this gray. Bleh. This is coming across as like super bubblegum pink. It's not. It's more like a sherbet pink. I might go with this one. So I want to see if I have enough yardage, so I will check that out. By the way, I burn tested this and it looks like it is a wool rayon blend, which I don't understand. It has no properties of anything like plastic for sure. Doesn't smell weird, doesn't have a hard bead, none of that. It doesn't have ashy, like light ash that's coming off of it at all, so it's not completely wool. And it doesn't self-extinguish, which gives all the like vibes of rayon off, but there's a whole bunch of stuff about the rayon that it doesn't and that it does the wool. So I'm getting both answers, so I'm thinking it's a blend. Okay, so since this fabric cannot be washed because the interior lining is going to be polished cotton, and if you wash polished cotton, it is no longer polished, and that sucks. I'm also putting tarlatan in it, which is a no wash situation. I don't know about wool rayon blend. It's possibly washable. Like, I think that might be one of the reasons it has rayon in it, is so you can wash. I'm not gonna wash it. What I am gonna do though is steam the wool right now so that I can get as much shrink out of it as possible. So I'm gonna set my iron up on wool and steamy steam, and then like pump it full of steam and let it cool on each section. So that's gonna take me a little while I get, I guess I have to do all 7 yards. Fun times, even though I'm not gonna use all 7 yards. I don't know how much I'm gonna use. I'm gonna shrink it all. Okay, for those of you who don't know what this is polished cotton. See how it's shiny? It's shiny. It is literally polished cotton. I believe that they hammer this over and over until it gets this sheen, or at least that's the traditional method. I'm pretty sure this polished cotton came from the 80s and was at Mill End Fabrics in Reno. It cannot be washed because the polish will lose its shine. It is not shiny on the back side of it, and it is very like, I don't know how to describe it other than like kind of papery, like waxed paper a little bit, but like not really. It's still definitely cloth, like waxed cloth. Like it kind of feels like that. But it's stiff, which is, I think, why it's a good interlining. It's also like, some of that stuff was really heavy when I picked it up, but when you fondle it, it's like very light. So anyway, I'm gonna cut the lining out now and see how that goes. Are you kidding me? Like, oh, really? Okay, cool. So I have to like piece the edge here. That's fun. Fun times. Okay. I'm done for the evening. I need to cut the tarlatan tomorrow, which is like just around the hem edge basically, and also the belt situation needs to be flatlined as well with the tarlatan. So, sorry, interlined. I've also added the task of piecing that lining now. Cool. Zigzagging the edges of all the fabric so far, interlining the hem edge, and then flatlining the fabric. So I will be doing that tomorrow. Okay, so how I'm gonna handle this piecing problem is I'm just gonna add a big old piece to the side and just like seam it right there, right next to it, put it on, and then lay down the other skirt piece on top of it, and then just cut it to match. I think that's simpler than trying to cut it ahead of time. I wanted to have a little chat here for people who may not know this, but if you are going to pick your thread and you go to the store and you match your thread exactly, it's not going to work. It's going to be too light. Thread, see how this one looks darker than this sort of? But when you use an individual thread, it's basically exactly the same color. It like disappears into it. So the best possible thing you can do is lay an actual individual thread over your fabric and see if it looks good there. You might want contrasting, you might want it to be off. Like there's a million reasons you might choose a different thread. This is just a thread I had around, so I'm using it because I do not want to go to the store for the purposes of a lining. But like when I looked at it, I was like, ah, it's a little dark. And then I put the thread on it and I was like, oh, actually, it's excellent. Like, especially when it's, you know, the camera shadow isn't in here. It's great. So, but I remember people telling me when I was younger also, like, always buy your thread darker than you think you need it. Okay, so we have this laid out. So it's a little bit wrinkly, but it's already on, it's not wrinkly on the side that matters. So I've laid it out and I can come over here and see, you know, where it is. So I can just kind of like continue this curve along this pattern piece, which is what I'm going to do. We are at the tarlatan interlining phase of this situation. What is tarlatan? People are probably wondering. Tarlatan is essentially like gauze that has been stiffened with like glue, effectively. It's like a very soft buckram. If anybody knows what buckram is, it's used to make hats. It's a similar feeling fabric. It's like kind of very coarse and like stiff feeling. It's like if organdy were not nice. It's very firm. But it still behaves like fabric, right? So it's like just very stiff fabric. People use it in bookbinding a lot. I buy this tarlatan from a bookbinder. However, I have felt tarlatan that Constance uses from England, which I do not want to pay the shipping for because they wanted to charge me like $60 or $70 to ship it to me. I'm like, I will go to England and get this myself. But I have felt that the British tarlatan, and it is very like, you could put that against your skin and it would not be problematic. This stuff is like kind of rough. This is definitely a bookbinder thing. So I buy this from a bookbinder. I can find that link and put it down below for you. My resources list is like publicly accessible on Notion and it's in there as well. Anyway, I will put a link to the American one and the British one in case you're in England. Like the Americans, if you want to spend that much money on shipping, go for it. But Brits, you can get yourself some tarlatan. Anyway, you are supposed to put this along the edge of the bottom of your skirt. So you don't include the seam allowance, and then you do 8 to 10 inches. You can actually do the whole skirt if you want to. I have done a skirt, in fact, and I hated it. Remember that red spotty one that was just like my ball gown material? In fact, it was my ball gown material. I made a skirt out of that, and part of what I didn't like about it was that I fully lined it in tarlatan. It was way too stiff. So you just do the bottom 8 to 10 inches in tarlatan, and the instructions on this give you a perfectly cogent and yet kind of complicated way to get that done. You can do it that way. I'm going to do it a little bit differently, whereas I'm just going to kind of wing it. They do tell you to like lay it down on your lining fabric and like cut it out based on that. I cut it out based on the edge and then just chop off the seam allowance. So the first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and iron this out so it's at least somewhat smooth, and then I'm going to do the front panel first because that's super easy, and then we'll work on the back panel. Okay, they describe this process as like essentially laying the lining piece down. I'm going to use this pattern piece for the first side because why the heck not? First of all, this is folded in half, so there are 2 layers here, and it is already stitched together because this is a leftover from something I did before, which is great because there's a seam line here and I'm just going to use that. They describe this process as like you put this on top instead, and then you take out the hem allowance of this first and like slide this up and then measure. That's fine for this one. The other one is a little bit of a nightmare. I'm just gonna cut it at like the hemline and then 8 inches up. I'm gonna use this whole piece, it's fine. This is obviously a remnant from something, there's darts in it from something else I did. Anyway, and then I'm just gonna cut the hem allowance off so that nobody has to stress about it. Remember kids, your instructions that come with your patterns are merely suggestions. They do not have to be followed exactly. Okay, so I cut it in the shape of the pattern, and then I cut off the bottom 1.25 inches, and then I cut it off 8 inches above that, just measured it. And here's the lining piece, and this is the wrong side of the lining piece. You can tell because it is not shiny. So now I'm just laying it on here. There are a couple ways to attach this. The recommended method of this pattern is to go ahead and just stitch it along the top and the bottom, which is what I'm going to do. If you were fussy AF and wanted to just hide it by stitching it only in those 2 areas, like the seam allowances, you could do that. If I were making this as like a 7 gourd skirt or a 5 gourd skirt instead of like, I guess this is a 3 gourd skirt, I would probably just hide it there, but because these panels are so wide, I don't love the like flopping around that would happen in there. Like that doesn't sound stable. And this is the lining, so like you're not gonna see this. Like who cares if there's a stitch line across there? So I'm gonna go ahead and pin this down and then stitch it across there, and then come back and we're gonna work on the back pieces. Here's piece 1 of the back piece lining. So there's 2 of them. I happen to have this section of tarlatan that I cut another skirt out of, So it has a curve in it already. Is it 8 inches? No, but it is a curve already, and it is the right size, or too big, which is the better option here. So rather than like piecing it as I go, for this particular one, I am going to use this curve to my advantage. I'm going to pin it down, and then I'm just going to cut off, like draw a line and cut off the 1 1/4 inch, and then cut off again at 8 inches so that we have a smooth one. This will give me kind of a freebie. So this is like my argument for, like, I'm not really a person who's like save every scrap, although I'm gonna make a Turkish poof at some point, so I am actually saving all my scraps. But like, this was helpful to keep around. I thought I would like use this or maybe like some of that at some point. I didn't think it would work out like this cool, but here we are. Okay, I have pinned it on and I have drawn a line, and now I'm just gonna go trim on that line and leave the pins in so I can sew. But I'm going to also measure and make another line and pin at 8 inches and then trim that one off first. Okay, I thought you'd like to see where we're at this point, which is I have trimmed off the bottom. I have pinned and drawn a line right there for the 8-inch line, and then I'm just going to go cut that off. And then I'm going to sew this down. And then I'm going to worry about the second back piece. Okay, this is what it looks like from the front, which is the inside of your skirt, right? But this is like the part that will touch your leg or your petticoat, and this is what it looks like on the inside. And now I'm gonna do that again, but I probably will have to piece. To be fair, this one was already pieced, so like that's normal. Okay, I had two like somewhat narrow pieces, so I just sort of like stitched them together here. I just ran a little zigzag with my like hand basting stitches. This little cutout didn't make it because it wasn't big enough, but that's okay. That's not gonna, everything's gonna be fine. Nothing's gonna die. It's fine. So I'm just gonna keep right on trucking and then pick that one up and go through. Okay, so this is done and this is done. I will need more tarlatan later for the belt, but for right now I'm just worrying about the skirt parts. This project is pretty intensive at the beginning with like prep, but it gets faster, you know, as you just are attack. That's a lie, because I'm gonna I'm gonna have to fell the seams and stuff. I'm gonna go ahead and zigzag the edges now. I don't need to do it on the cotton. The cotton is totally fine, but I am going to do it on the wool layer because it is, you know, fraying out a little bit on the bias parts. I also think that I should hang this before I hem it for sure, because a lot of this is cut on the bias. Zigzag is done. Okay, this is a big project, so I'm gonna do this tomorrow. Hello. So we do not have a lot of time this weekend to be sewing, unfortunately. Yesterday was insanity. I had a lunch with a friend, and then by the time I got home I had to almost completely immediately turn around and go to a concert in Oakland. I went to see Evanescence and Muse, for anybody who's into those bands. It's a very good show. I had a very good time. I'm not even like a huge fan of Muse, but I had a great concert, so that was awesome. And then tomorrow night I'm gonna go see They Might Be Giants perform Flood, which is an album that is like gotta be 30 years old at least now, maybe 35. I don't know, a long time. Like I was listening to Flood my freshman year of high school, so it's been a while. Anyway, so I am going to deviate from the pattern a little bit in the way that they are talking about doing this hem. I don't know if my idea is going to work. It's not something I've ever tried before. It's a very hard to explain hem. If you're going to do this pattern, I suggest you do it the way that they are going to tell you to do, but I will show you how I'm going to do mine, possibly step by step here as I do it, just so you can see. Okay, so what they tell you to do is essentially flatline these two pieces together and then take both of them. Say there was another piece that was on top here, and you would essentially fold the piece, you know, your hemline over, and then you just put a tape over it. Sew that down, call it good. I am going to attempt to hem them sort of separately, sort of together, piece by piece. So I'm going to go ahead and fold this up, iron it down, and then stitch it down on each of the 3 pieces. Then I'm going to flatline around the edges, and then I'm going to come in here, and this one will already be folded up, and I'm going to try to tuck the seam allowance of the top fabric in so that it hangs over just a little bit from this, and then stitch that down to it by hand. I have no idea if this is going to work. I don't know if it's going to be tenable because there are 3 pieces and then they'd have to line up perfectly on the hem to make the hem even. It's something I'm like, you know, I am concerned about. But you can change the height at the top, right? So I can make the bottoms line up. So I'm gonna try this and see how it looks. It sounds like it's gonna look amazing if I can pull this off, so we will see. And yes, I am treating this essentially as like an 18th century lining because this is how jackets get lined and stuff like that during that period. So I'm trying to see if I can make that look happen, a very clean finished inside edge. We're gonna see if this works. Okay, this is the front piece. God, it's so red. It is so purple in person. There's no right or wrong side to this as far as I can tell, but there is an ever so slightly softer side. It's like almost undetectable. And they look the same, like they look identical. There's no difference. So I'm gonna put the softer side on the outside so I can pet myself. So this is the wrong side of the fabric. I already ran a lint remover over this because there's an abundance of cat hair in the air in my house, as you can imagine. And then I'm gonna lay the other piece on top of it with the hemline. This hemline will obviously be longer because I just turned up the lining piece. Okay, awesome. So this is down and it's, you know, smoothed out as much as it can be smoothed out. There are always will be bubbles, so like you could make yourself insane with this if you wanted to. You also could use spray basting in here. I haven't seen people do that. This sounds like a better idea than what I'm doing because this is a lot more effort. So normally I might consider that situation. I don't have any on hand and I want to work on this. So I'm going to baste up 2 sides of this. I'm going to just put some pins around the outside just to hold it in place while I do that. But the basting is there to keep it like vaguely straight. These are going to be giant basting stitches though, so I will show you when I'm done. I have no way to actually show you this because this is yellow basting on pink, which is like almost invisible, but essentially I pinned it all the way around the edge, you can see that, and I have basted it up. Yes, there are wrinkles. That will happen. The only way to not do that is to use spray basting and like treat it like, you know, get your credit card out and slide it out. So I'm not worried about it. Like it's the lining of the skirt. That much is not going to be a problem. Okay, so it's all flat lined right there. And then you can see here what I've done, where I've just like tucked this up under but left just a little bit out so that the skirt is out aside of the lining. So the lining is not the thing that you see from the outside. And then I'm just going to go hand fell this down. Okay, so I have now laid out one of these. I'm going to just do 2 of them. So I'm just going to cover one and then it's going to be the same process here. Except that I'm not going to go right now, which I just did with the front piece, which is cut on the straight on the center fold. So that doesn't really have very much bias. This is all bias. So what I'm actually going to do with this guy is like do the flat lining on the sides here, and then I'm actually, maybe I should just pin this up and let it hang. Maybe that's a better idea. Ugh, I hate it. I'm gonna pin up the sides and then I'm gonna put it on the dress form, like just pin it to the dress form and let it hang, because if this stretches out, which it might, like especially this curve here might stretch out, the ramifications would be a giant bubble. So I'm just gonna let it hang overnight. Okay, so it's been literally, I think 48 hours now. No, more than 24, like 36 hours. It didn't stretch at all. Like this is the same amount of out that the bottom edge was before. So that's great. I hung it kind of in the same formation that it will be hung on the skirt just to see if it would stretch at all. It's not. If you have stuff that's cut, like this is a straight grain and that's a straight grain, but that's a bias. If this was the bias, that would be even more of a reason to hang it. If there's a bias involved, I like to hang it if I can, to just make sure if it's gonna stretch, it'll stretch before I sew it. Otherwise, you're gonna get huge bubbles, right? And so because the wool will stretch and this will not. Someone in a previous comment asked me about like, oh, I heard you're supposed to line it so that it doesn't sag. I'm like, the center of this will sag if it's gonna sag, no matter what, even though it's lined. Even though it's flat lined, it will sag. Because like these 2 pieces aren't attached to each other anywhere in here. They're only attached along the edges. So like if that fabric is gonna droop, it's gonna droop. So I think the only way you could avoid actual sagging is like using interfacing, really. Yeah, so anyway, I need to go ahead and just do the basting stitches up here and then flatline this guy, and then I'll stitch the same process I just did. It's going to happen again on both of these pieces, so I'll be back when that's all done. All right, basted, flatlined, and hemmed, and there are 2 in here. This is what my little hem looks like. I like it. I'm very proud of it. I think it's pretty. We'll see what happens when I try to put this thing together. That also means we can do this and this. I'm gonna erase this and make a new set of tasks to do because we have finally just finished like fabric prep. Like we aren't even into moving through the instructions yet. Fun times. So here we go. Okay, actually I'm wrong. I did this, that all was step 1. So everything I have done so far has been step 1. Now we can go to step 2. Good morning, friends. Okay, let's be honest. It's afternoon. We all know that. Noelle does not get out of bed until afternoon. I have made a new list and with a new set of tasks to do, so I will go through that with you real quick so that we know what the path is to completion, and then we'll carry on. Okay, so we're going to sew the back, we're going to deal with the plackets, we're going to do the darts, we're going to cut the pockets and insert them, we're going to sew up the sides, we're going to prep the waistband, put it on, sew the hooks on, the eyes, whatever loops, whatever, those happen with the placket, so you only have to really do the hooks. And then as a stretch goal, I have fell seam allowances. That may or may not happen in this vlog. We'll see. We'll see how I feel at the end of it. If I want to sit there and fell all those seam allowances down by hand, it might be something I do like later. So for now, let's deal with the back. I was expecting them to be like, sew up back seam. Haha. No, just as like step number 1 was like, go do 3 pages worth of stuff. Step number 2 is all of this. And a little bit onto that page, so fun times. So it's basically sew the back, but then also insert the plackets with the hooks on them. So I have to find some hooks that I feel like are good for this purpose, and then also get all this done. So that is my main focus for today, is just getting this back section done. We'll see what happens, what else I can get done after that, but this is my goal for the day. I have pinned these together from the bottom up. Normally I would tell you to sew from the top down on all seams on a skirt, but in this case, because we're trying to make sure that these hems line up exactly, I was pretty precise about lining this up. And I'm going to start sewing this way, so I have figured out my pins so that I can do that. I am also using quilting pins, you may notice, because they're beefier and heavier. They're significantly stronger than the normal pins I use, which are glass-headed silk pins. One, because they're significantly smaller, make smaller holes, etc., but also because they have glass heads, they can be ironed over, whereas these can't. Or in the case of some of these, which isn't very apparent, here's one where I have ironed over it. You can see I've already started melting the pin head. So these are plastic-headed. Quilting pins are usually plastic-headed, so you want to not iron over those if you can help it. I, of course, have and probably will. Normally, I use smaller pins for this. Anyway, this is all to say I'm doing everything kind of off book right now because I hemmed first, so I have to essentially go upwards. Luckily, the notches do match when I got here, so I feel pretty good about that. And it says to stop at the mark. I have notched everywhere that was marked, so that's great because this is going to work out well for me. Okay, we have sewn the back, and I am currently dealing with the placket. There's a wad of fabric that proves my sewn back. Here is a placket. I have folded it over, sewn down this guy, trimmed it down a little bit, clipped it, flipped it inside out and pressed it. So I have drawn in the sewing line on it because I need to put the hooks on here so that they dangle over the sewing line. I have transferred that sewing line to the back also so that when I sew, I can sew on the same line as I did on the front, because that would suck if I didn't do that. So I'm going to go ahead and stitch, I think 5 or 6 of these along here so that I have something to hook onto. And then you put the hooks on at the very end. Okay, here's my placket with these hooks, eyes, sewn on. I use the Nikki Leam patented 5-star method. It's really called the 5-star method by me only because each of the circles uses a 5-stitch sew-on that is in the shape of a star, and it works like a treat. She has a whole video on this. I will link it down below. If you do go watch this video, if I can put it up there, I will also. But if you go watch that video, please leave her a comment in the comment section that says Noelle sends her love, so that she knows that I sent you over there. Anyway, I am gonna look at how to attach this. I think I attach it by hand, which is cool, because I don't know how I would get my machine to go over these. So, yeah. Okay, now an incredibly difficult thing to explain. We're sewing it on the right side placket, so I put the skirt like it would be if it was on my back. So that's the inside going that way. Outside is going that way. So this is my right side, so this is what the side it's going on. And it got pinned in here, right sides together, so that when I flip it out, the little eyes that I have sewn in here will face out. Also, I'm going to stitch down to where I seamed it to, so you can see that the end of my stitching is there where it's already joined, but I'm not going to sew obviously any further because I can't, but that's so that I can flip it to the inside as well. I'm going to try to backstitch as much as possible, but I will skip over the eyes here with just straight stitching because it's a lot easier to deal with. Here's a little trick I use. I need to keep track of these hooks because there are 5 of them, but I don't have any more, so I need to keep track of these. So I thread them onto a pin and then pin them to my ham. And that is the easiest way for me to keep track of them. I press the placket out so you can see all the sleepy little boys tucked up in their beds here, ready to receive a hook. And I always get a hook out and I like put it on there just to make sure it is hookable. It's impossible to do with one hand, so I'm not even going to try it, but that's what that ends up looking like, which I think is great, so that you know what the back looks like. It's basically open and flat. I just pressed it completely flat. So now I'm going to go handle the placket that goes on this side, and then we will be ready to move on to other parts of the skirt. I am going to do that placket also by hand, even though I don't have to, because when you get down to the bottom section, it's real fiddly. When the machine happens, there's also some understitching you have to do. So like it's just kind of easier if I just do it by hand. So I'm just going to do it by hand. And also, these things are like 10 inches long. It's not that big of a deal. Funnily enough, this is like the same pattern, but like a more true red. This is actually also showing up super bright, and it is much darker in person. I was mostly just trying to see if it would show you the real color of this if I put something that was actually red next to it and not like pink, but no, it's still awfully bright over here. Look at how bright my hand looks like. Obviously we know my hand. Oh, maybe my hand is the trick. It is getting closer, right next to where my hand is. I'll say is all you have to do is put it next to something pale AF and it'll maybe show you true colors. Oh, I have my neck light on and that's actually helping a lot. So, okay, here's the placket. I sewed it on like this and then I folded it open, and I have now done a little bit of understitching, which you can actually see there, which is kind of amazing. Yay, lights. So it's this like tiny line of stitches that's going right along here. So now I'm going to press this under and then flip this under and tack that down, essentially. And then I think we are in good shape. There might be one other little thing I have to do here, but then plackets are done. Okay, here's where it is. It's got a placket in it now so that they can connect. I will at the end be putting hooks on the back of this to hook into these eyes, but not right now. So we can mark off deal with the placket situation, because that is done. In the back, you can see right where the plackets, this is where the placket is sewn, so you can see that line right there. On either side, there is a deep box pleat. Well, they form a box pleat together, both sides. So I need to mark these pleat lines here and then go ahead and baste in the deep pleat that is supposed to be in the back. So that is what's going to happen now. You can see those marks here and here, and all I have to do is pick this guy up and bring it to the edge here. It should fold right on this line, pin it, and then baste it. Alright, these are pinned but not yet basted. Right before I sew, I like to straighten out any, pleating that I have done so that it is, parallel and I can see it running down for quite some way below where I'm basting, just to make sure it's going to hang right and like fall straight and like I'm not basting in some weird angle that I don't love. So I just wanted to point out that little tip to like sit there and smooth this out before you're going to go ahead and run stitches along the top, because you're not putting it in there permanently, it's definitely just basted, but it'll help you later just to like make sure that that's all square. Here is the pocket pattern that I was given. Here is the pocket pattern I want to use. The opening is about the same size, so I'm pretty happy with that. But this is how much more room it gives you, and it would allow me to put my phone in, which this pocket, if you include seam allowance, doesn't really. I mean, maybe just, yeah, I want a deep pocket. So I'm going to use this pattern, which I'm very happy with, and probably I'll adjust the opening to be the same and maybe go at a slant, at least on the bottom, but maybe not the top. I'm going to cut these out of both materials and then flatline them just like the skirts. You can do it just out of the lining material if you want to. I mean, I think this says to do it just out of the lining. It doesn't say it on here. I think it says it in the instructions. Anyway, I like to go ahead and have the material on the inside be the same as what the skirt is. It's also cozier. So I think I'm just going to flatline them as well. Okay, we have 4 half pockets, so I'm going to go ahead and flatline these and zigzag around the edges so that they are all set to go and ready to be inserted once I decide to do that. We have darts in and pressed. They look good. Now I'm going to insert pockets between these marks. I had dreams about doing this, so clearly this skirt is invading my mind. Okay, so the next step was to secure the pockets in place, which I have done on both the front and the back. And this method here will let me put my hand into this pocket, and I will feel the luxury of this plaid fabric. It'll also make it so like when you peep in there you don't see anything, it'll make it disappear. But it is of course flat lined, so it is nice and sturdy, and this will be the inside against the pink background. So I still haven't figured out if I'm going to do like an edge treatment to that at some point. Maybe not now, but maybe later I would go along and like bias bind. I don't know. We'll see. Okay, I'm sewing these seams super slowly so that I can make sure this lines up perfectly, which it does. I'm so happy. And then also, so this pocket is like basically invisible, which it is. I love it. I think it looks good. I'm happy with it. So I got one down, and I'm gonna go do the other side. Side seam and pocket number 2 is in, and we are golden. Okay, now we need to prep and deal with waistband. This waistband is 4 full pieces, and it's actually more actual pieces, but 4 full pattern pieces. This is the inside of the waistband front. This is the outside of the waistband front because I'm having a pointed tip. Although I'm not sure how this works because I think you have to fold under the seam allowance. Okay, then there is a left and right side, and they are not the same sides, and it's because of how the placket attaches. You can just do 2 of these if you want to, and then hook those on. I am obviously doing the hardest thing possible, and then you're supposed to cut this guy out of fusible interfacing and fuse it, but not have the seam allowance of the bottom edge. Okay, just a little pro tip how I cut this off fairly exactly was that I didn't. I cut the pattern piece and then I cut off 5/8 off this edge and just scooted it back. And then we have a perfect match. So I'm going to go ahead and fuse these together and then start putting the side pieces on both of these so that we can get the belt done. If I point the point away from me, then the left will be on the left side, although this should be flipped over. So like you got to figure out how to get the left on the left side for you. I thought I would stop and show you waistband guts. Okay, so here's the interface part. I could have done this with tarlatan. I opted for this because I wanted to, whatever. So they are, this is the inner waistband, this is the outer waistband. They are seamed together at the top, and then I pinked it. Then I pinked it pretty close. I don't know if that was a good idea or not. I've also folded this guy over, and I'm gonna baste this down because this is gonna get hand felled down, and I just need to do the edges together and then flip the whole thing inside out and press it really good so that it's nice and delicious. And then I will attach it to the skirt and then hand fell down the waistband. That might happen tomorrow because it's pretty late. So anyway, looking good so far. Okay, waistband prep is done. It is chaotic looking. I would love to attach it right now and get this friggin' done, but this is the case. So not pleased. Need to go obviously get some more of this tomorrow. I will search my cabinet one more time, but I think that was it. So I will pop out tomorrow and get it and then finish this guy up. Okay, so I pinned the waistband onto this just to make sure it was the right size and worked out and stuff, and it totally does. I'm gonna hand sew it on though, because I have learned through many times of putting waistbands on over and over and over and over again that it's just easier to do by hand. So I'm gonna go do this by hand. I'm gonna take it off first though and draw the stitch line on, because that's how we roll here in Casa Padawan, and then go sit on my bed and listen to my book or something and just stitch. Okay, so I have put the waistband on, and you can tell that I cut it cross grain because the width of this grain stripe is not the width of this creep stripe. It's actually going this way. There's some stuff like I might have done differently, like I didn't really pay very much attention to the fact that some of my little stitches are coming through. I do want to show you what this is though, because this is an interesting thing that I decided to kind of put in last minute, but I've seen it before a few times and I thought it was a great idea. As you can see, here is my giant pocket bag, and this guy comes out pretty far, whereas the other one was very sloped. I like to have them be pretty big, right? So what I did here was just take a little piece of essentially twill tape. This is actually nylon, I think, but I sewed it very heartily to this thing. Like you can't see it from the other side. It's sewn all the way around. And then I came up through the waistband when I was putting the waistband on, and then I sewed it into the waistband, but then I also sewed it again to like double secure it onto the seam allowance that's up inside of here before I folded over and filled the front of the waistband, so that the pockets have a little bit of extra security. The weight isn't all on the side seams, it's also on the waistband. And so like if I put something really heavy in there, it doesn't just like collapse. It'll be held up by the waistband, which is pretty cool. Last night when I was bummed that I ran out of thread, I put on 4 out of the 5 hooks and eyes, which pretty dark in there to see, but I need to put on this last one and then probably put one up here. There's another section in there that talks about if you want to, you can put a piece of twill tape that is like an extra bit long on both sides of this that also has hooks and eyes on it that you fell to the bottom of the waistband here, both top and bottom of it, to give you like extra oomph to hold up the weight of the skirt, because this thing is not light. Like it's pretty heavy actually, so I'm not going to do that right now. I'm definitely going to think about whether or not I want to add that feature. It's definitely something you can add later. If I do it, I'll probably do it with this tape because this tape is nice and sturdy. But yeah, for the most part I just need to put on a couple hooks and eyes and then I'm all done and I can show you guys what I got. Okay, all the hooks and eyes have been added. Okay, I'm very excited to go ahead and try this on. I'm just going to do it over my t-shirt for you so you guys can see what she looks like. She's very pretty. I'm just enamored with her. I cannot wait to make maybe a waistcoat to go with her. I'm so glad that she fits me with and without a corset. Like, that's the best. It's one of the advantages to not corseting down that much is like, it's not that hard to make clothes that fit both. It's definitely more flattering with the corset on, but I'll show you what it's like in my t-shirt. Okay, here she is in all of her glory. I'm showing off my Vicky Checo shoes. Man, she's a pretty skirt. I really like most of the profiles here. Look at this fantail. I do think I need a bustle hip pad. Look at, I'm checking out all my hip space, but I do like these pockets. Pockets turned out really well. They hang really well. That's some good swoosh as well. I'm into it. And thus we now have a fantail skirt, which I'm very excited about. I'm glad to have a little simple thing that fits me without a corset that I can wear to costume events if I need to. I could definitely make a shirtwaist, or I could maybe like use a cravat of some sort and then get myself a nice waistcoat. So maybe we'll be making a waistcoat at some point soon. Definitely gonna make that hip pad because that is something that I would like to fill out the silhouette just a little bit more with. It also gives you that nice snatched waist illusion. So I'm looking forward to making that at some point. I'll definitely be putting that on my board here for maybe not current projects, but definitely like on the main project list. Do I have thoughts on this pattern? Yeah, I do. Do I think it's a good pattern? I do. I think the pattern is good. However, I would say that maybe it's not a beginner level pattern. You'd think it would be because it's only 3 pieces. Well, there's more pieces for the waistband than there are for the actual skirt. But actually having the pieces be that big is like kind of a more challenging prospect for a beginner because you'd have to do all that interior basting, and there's actually something that's kind of easier about having more gores in a skirt because it will like allow you more adjustment points. It will allow you to not have to worry about basting so much on your flat lining. Like you can just do the edges, you don't have to do up the center all the time. There are reasons that I think maybe for a very new beginner that you might want to go for a pattern that has like more gores to it, but I would say that this is a very good pattern. Everything lined up correctly, the skirt is beautiful, I like the way it spins, it's lovely. Anyway, I think that does it for this video. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Please go down there and tell me what you're working on. To the downstairs, I think that's what we're calling it, down below this comment section, whatever we're calling it. The downstairs is where I leave descriptions. So below the downstairs is the comment section. Go into that and leave me comments. Let me know how you are, what you're working on, what you're listening to, what you're watching. I'm listening to Dresden Files number 13. It's the one after Ghost Story. I haven't figured out which one that is, but it's very good and I am enjoying it very much. What am I watching? I'm watching Ted Lasso. I love Ted Lasso. I watched the end of The Mandalorian. That was really great. I'm not sure if they're continuing that series or not. They left it in a very, like, this could wrap up here kind of place. So I'm not sure what's going to happen, and I've heard a lot of rumors about that. So I'm very curious to see what happens with that because it's a great and beloved show. I think that's all I have for you guys this week, so subscribe if you haven't, ring the bell if you want to, and I will see you guys next week with another vlog. And remember to go down below to the description and download yourself some June's Journey. Bye guys!